Good evening, everyone. I'm Jessica Hagedorn. Tsering Woeser is an award-winning Tibetan writer and poet. A child of the Cultural Revolution, she was raised and educated entirely in the Chinese language and never learned to read or write in her native Tibetan. Ironically, it is this that has enabled her to give public expression for the first time in China to the emotions and experiences of the Tibetan people. Woeser's troubles began when her second book, the best-selling Notes on Tibet, was banned in 2003 for revealing opinions, quote, harmful to the unification and solidarity of our nation, unquote. Early this year, she was barred by Chinese authorities from leaving China for Oslo to accept the Norwegian Authors Union's Freedom of Expression Prize. On March 10th, after demonstrations began in Lhasa that would soon sweep through Tibet, she was placed under house arrest in Beijing. She continues to write from a small Beijing apartment where she lives with her husband, writer Wang Lisheng, posting poetry and essays on Tibetan culture and the current situation on the internet, and publishing her books in Taiwan. In mainland China, her books are banned, her 3 blogs have been shut down, she is unemployed, and her movements remain restricted. I am going to read an excerpt from A Killing Trip, a personal essay recounting a trip Woeser took in 2001 with her cousin and his friends to one of her favorite places in Tibet. Typical of her writing, it is a rich, complex portrait of the tensions and threatened cultural and spiritual traditions of Tibet. A Killing Trip, translated by Jampa Pachung Di Sanam, Tenzin Sundu, and Jane Perkins. And my apologies if I screw up anybody's name, please. A Killing Trip. I ran into my cousin Gyatso in a bar next to my work unit. Without chatting much, he invited me to join a trip to Durdrum, hot spring, the next day. A scene of the steamy spring hidden away in the mountain, shining brightly under the moonlight, appeared in my mind. I accepted right away. I had been to Durdrum twice. The first time was early summer 1995. The bus I took was so slow I could keep writing during the ride. At that time, both the women's side of the spring and the men's side were open, and anybody could peep at the naked bodies of others. Also, there were snakes, the kind that are very long and thin, slowly slithering over the rocks. Fortunately, somebody had told me that the snakes at Durdrum are harmless. The second time I went to Durdrum was 2 years ago in the spring. It was still snowing. As soon as I got close to the spring, 2 naked foreign women emerged from the steamy water. In a very short while, their bodies were covered with snowflakes that quickly melted. They were giggling. The scene was unforgettable. I am one of those who like to bathe in the hot spring when it is late. Sometimes at night, I mean when it gets really late, you can be alone, immersed in the spring's warm water for hours. Under the moonlight, the spring is so clean that you can see the bottom and count the stones and small pebbles. Looking up through the foggy air like smoke scattering, the yellow moon and the silver stars are incomparably beautiful. When even the barking dogs are subdued and there's only the sound of the water flowing, one can do nothing but sigh. Besides my cousin Gyatso, my traveling companions were 4 other young Tibetan men. Born in the 1970s, they were all sent to inland China to study at Tibetan high schools and returned to work in Lhasa after graduating from college. They've either resigned from their government posts and become businessmen or tried to remain in their offices while investing in private business on the side. Together, they had just opened a new tourism company. They named it Durdrum. Although Durdrum is famous for its hot spring, it has no paved road, electricity, or telephone connection. Even though Meldro-Gungkar County is aware of the commercial value of the brand and the auspicious location of Durdrum, its infrastructure work can't reach that far. So, my cousin's friends have so far invested $100,000 to $130,000 to lease most of the land around the hot spring to build a hotel, set up a telephone link, and even have plans for road construction and a mini power plant. The entire process has been carried out with the green light of the government. In the beginning, I thought Gyatso had invited me along purely because of the hot spring. Among my many cousins in Lhasa, I get along best with him, and though he's tall, I still find him childlike. I later realized what he really wanted was for me to write something about their Derdrum tourism company. He wouldn't have thought I would write something like this. Gyatso once said to me, "Aja, you like to write about Tibet? You should write about young Tibetans like us. We are the masters of Tibet's future." As soon as we started for Derdrum, Pasang, who was sitting in the front seat, pulled out a grenade-shaped firecracker and yelled, "Let's fire it." Suwong stopped him. "Don't you see the soldiers are watching the bridge? It would be surprising if we don't get arrested. Do it after we've passed the bridge." No sooner had we passed the bridge than grenades began to explode. All along the road there were dumps piled with plastic bags, oil depots, villages, small stores, concealed military camps, farms, ruins on the hills, repainted monasteries, and rows of tiled county buildings. Of course, none of these was the target of the explosions. It was only people along the road, like farmers in their horse-drawn carts or on tractors, passengers in buses parked at the roadside, small groups of contract workers. Whenever Sharab saw Sichuanese-looking Han, he would shout, "Blow them up!" Wandering monks in their red robes, children with runny noses, and so on, who were scared by the explosions right next to them and screamed and ran away. Then there were also pigs, dogs, cows, sheep, and horses. None of these animals was spared. As soon as we got to Meldro, Gungkar County, we changed to a Toyota SUV belonging to the County Tax Bureau. I heaved a sigh of relief because the grenades were finally finished, but unexpectedly, as we were changing vehicles, Targay proudly produced a small-bore rifle from the car's trunk. "What are you doing with a gun?" I asked. "Hunting, of course," he said matter-of-factly. Maybe because my question sounded superfluous, someone else added, "Let's knock down some of those cackling chickens." I could feel my heart sinking. And so the trip, saturated with the smell of gunpowder, no, the smell of killing, started. Passing a mountain slope covered with bushes, a target of killing finally appeared. It was a rabbit, a goofy-looking rabbit exposing itself in a big open space as though it was calling them to kill it. Targay braked the SUV and stepped out with his rifle. He didn't even try to move carefully or muffle the noise of his steps. Instead, he lifted up the rifle and shot at one of the rabbit's hind legs. The "don't" that I shouted was too late, too weak, and was at once drowned by the cheers erupting everywhere inside the car. Thank you.